If one starts to refine their taste, McDonald's food won't taste as good anymore, and this can be a very healthy thing. Hey people, I'm sure that today's video will be a cause of displeasure to a few people. But I like to discuss controversial topics like this because we can learn a lot from each other this way. But I'm just asking you to watch this video until the end, so I have the chance to get all of my points across. So the question is, can or should we refine our taste, especially our taste in music? I will argue that yes, we can and we should, because I believe that we pride ourselves on our tastes too often. Few people reflect on this and ask themselves, why do I even like that? Did I choose this consciously? For example, you're in a specific phase of life and you listen to certain music. We tend to stick to what has influenced us back then, especially when there is little resistance. Meaning, we might have friends that listen to the same music, or it's just accessible and popular. Your parents probably had certain records on their shelves, and you just grew up listening to those. So that is what influences your taste in music. But what I dislike is people flattering themselves about their taste. And I dislike it even more when people condemn or instantly reject a music genre that they simply don't know yet. From my rock and metal colleagues I hear often, I hate jazz, or even jazz is crap. It might be smarter to say, I haven't found an access to it yet, because that's just what it is, isn't it? For a new music genre, you also have to find new ways of listening to it and perceive it. You have to understand what this music is about first. You can't hear, understand and like jazz music if you listen to it with the same expectations you listen to rock with. Of course you get bored when you watch a sport whose rules and codes you don't understand. It's impossible at this point for you to divide and judge. But if someone explains the rules, codes and aesthetics to you, it gives you the chance to understand it better and to appreciate it. And this example is not topic specific, it works for all of them. Music, wine, fine arts. That's why you have guided tours through museums. So you can get things explained in detail and learn where to place your focus. It simply helps your aesthetic perception. In the US, there are so-called music appreciation courses, and I think that's a great idea. In those courses, you learn how to consciously listen to classical music, what to put your focus on, and you dive into the historic background as well. That gives you the tools and framework to understand classical music. You just need an introduction to the topic. The goal of such sorts of education is always to broaden your horizon and deepen your understanding, and that's rarely a bad thing. It supports personal development, and this way education leads to edification. And if you're actively dealing with art, another thing happens. You are steadily training your senses. I have a nice anecdote for that. When I started to dive deeper into jazz music and jazz drumming with my teacher and mentor, he said I had to buy a suitable ride cymbal, since it is one of the most important parts for the drums in jazz music. So we went to the music store together and tested ride cymbals for hours. And I always favored the thick, brilliant cymbals that I used for rock and metal because of their clear sound. However, he told me those are just not the right ones for the music genre I wanted to play. He said that this clear sound comes from the aesthetics in that music and also that it is heavily studio-produced music. So I've learned to abstract and how to tell the difference between the sound in a room and the sound of a recording. And I also learned to pick out the instruments not for their sound on their own, but for their suitability for the music I will play on them. If you pay close attention by listening to these sound aesthetics and range of frequencies, you'll notice that in jazz there is a different spectrum needed than with rock. That way I didn't only train my hearing, my senses, and broadened my horizon, but I also expanded and educated my taste in music. And only because I took the time to understand the genre was I able to choose the right ride cymbal in the end. Funnily enough, because my taste kept evolving, after some time I didn't like that particular ride cymbal anymore, and I chose the next ones in an even more differentiated manner. I went to a showroom of my sponsor Masterwork Cymbals and spent 2 days in a soundproof booth. From 2,000 cymbals I chose 200 that I tested thoroughly and went home with 5 of them in the end. during that process, I came to realize how much I had trained my hearing doing that. Because after a while I noticed that I was able to hear things and frequencies I wasn't able to hear before. So by carefully keeping the context in mind and then trying to pick out the perfect symbol for this context, I actually trained my hearing, my senses. So I sharpened the tools that enable me to listen to and play music. And this way I learned that having instructions or help is very important when you're trying to pick up more about, in this case, sound, aesthetics, and learn how to differentiate your own taste. This way you will be able to appreciate much more in the music you hear and play. The negative side of this process is, of course, that one has to leave certain things behind. As you refine your taste, you will deem things that you used to like as not likable anymore, not up to your now risen standards. Maybe you have experienced this already by listening to an album that you haven't listened to for a long time, thinking, oh God, how could I have ever liked this? Well, that's actually something positive, as it points out that you have developed and grown out of this, so to speak. And sometimes you have an album that you liked to listen to and it's still just as good. Now you even might understand better why you liked it in the first place. Also, you don't have to be afraid that you'll get to a point where you won't be able to listen to any music at all, because there is just no shortage of amazing music. So no matter how much you refine your taste, it does not limit you. My goal is to heighten my standards, to exclude the cheap and superficial. In my opinion, especially as a musician, that is something very important. Just imagine if I hadn't worked on my taste. My videos from today would look like my very first one, and those were not good at all. So I have raised my expectations for my videos regarding my way of talking, the set and the post-production, and this way you also gain from that. What does not exist is the right taste or the ideal taste. Nevertheless, we should drop the thinking of taste as being innate, that we only have this one God-given taste that is right for us and we shouldn't change. We should reflect and think about why we like something. Is it just because we had an easy access to it, or did we consciously choose and differentiate our taste? And again, there can't be an ideal taste since we are all individuals and there are endless forms of art and stylistics, meaning each one of them has their own aesthetics and codes. Those you would have to learn first, then you can judge and differentiate, and if you are active in this art form, on the basis of those criteria, achieve the best possible result in that field. You might have noticed that we are going back and forth between two things: broadening your horizon and deepening your understanding of a topic. I think both are important, and we should learn to focus in depth on a style or an art form to analyze it and detect nuances. This enhances your aesthetic experience. But just as much we need the expansion of our horizons to get to know as much as possible about the world, maybe even to transfer it. You know that I'm a big fan of interdisciplinary learning, meaning to transfer knowledge from one field into another. But also in general, to me, a broad and differentiated view of the world is always a good thing and is crucial to personal development. I'm a huge fan of always trying to look at the world through a different lens. Imagine you spend some time learning about architecture. You will go through your city with very different eyes. You will see things that you have never noticed before. This is how I do it. I regularly take an album or a book that I'm unfamiliar with, but one with high cultural significance. I watch or read a brief introduction on it, and then with keen eyes I take in the art, and afterwards I watch or read an analysis of it, so I can gain new perspective on what I have felt and learned and integrate it. Cinematic art is also a great example. Ever since I engrossed myself in it, learning more about it and its significance, I see so much more in movies. And now I understand some references in The Simpsons about Citizen Kane or in Star Wars about Metropolis. Obviously, not everyone can be interested in everything, since this inevitably leads to superficiality. We need specialization, so it is completely okay to cultivate a deliberate ignorance and to say, I'm not interested in this because I'd rather specialize in my own topic to become excellent in. And that's completely legitimate. This paves the way for a more varied society where people have a great palette of tastes. The only thing I can hope for is that you won't say, I hate this or that anymore, but say, I haven't found a way to enjoy it yet, or I have decided consciously against that. But just try it as an experiment. Choose a topic that you don't like that much or you don't have an access to yet. Then go looking for a person who does or is even a master in that topic and let them give you an introduction. No matter if it's cigars, abstract painting, free jazz or black metal. If you find a good approach for it, you might be able to appreciate it and to gain something out of it for you personally. And black metal is a very good example because I always listened to a lot of metal music, but there was this whole part of it that I couldn't enjoy because I couldn't bear the screaming vocals. And I thought it's a pity that there is so much great music I can't listen to just because of the way they are singing. How about I just try to like it for a start? And in time I learned to value it, to find small differences and understood why the vocals sound like that. I appreciated the emotional component it brings. So it takes some time to get to know something, train your senses, and yes, having to bear it at first until you can hold it in high regards. Now I have found an access to it and a lot of depth in the music has become visible to me. For example, with bands or musicians like Ishan, Leprous, Devin Townsend, Periphery and a lot of others who use this vocal component. Meaning I first had to make this entire music genre arable for me, a genre that I love today, and I'm happy I took the time to learn to love it. Maybe you know this, when you have to listen to an album multiple times to really like it, and that's a good sign when you realize that there's always more than the first listen will give you. You will be able to listen to it again and again and always find new things to analyze and break down. I have made this experience with the band Leprous. A friend of mine recommended them to me and I listened to 2 of their albums, but I didn't really like it. But I just had this feeling that there was more to it. I tried it again and tried it again. I was curious and then I just discovered the greatness of this amazing band just because I felt there was more to gain from this, and it just took the time to get to know this music. And now for me, Leprous is one of the most amazing active bands out there. So in my experience, the best ones are the albums that you had to listen many times to before you could actually love them. So let me know in the comments if you have experienced not understanding a book or an album or a whole form of art yourself too, but in time came to actually love it. Feel free also to let me know in the comments when you take on such a project. I wish you a lot of fun broadening your horizon. If you want to see more videos about music, learning, personal development and also playing the drums, then please hit subscribe and also activate the notification bell, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care and bye bye. If something is unpleasant to me or shocks me, I don't say I don't like this. I say, interesting. I have a lot to learn and experience with this. So it's just a different answer. My reaction when I heard free jazz for the first time probably didn't differ from yours, but I thought it was interesting that there are people who actually like that, and I would like to understand why.